morning, everyone, and welcome to the final talk in our This is STEM livestream series. We're delighted you could join us and hope you're looking forward to the talk this morning. My name is Connor, and I work with Science Foundation Ireland on a programme called Smart Futures. For those who might not know about Smart Futures or Science Foundation Ireland, I will give you a brief introduction before we kick off our talk. Science Foundation Ireland is the Irish government's largest competitive funder of scientific research in Ireland. In addition to funding excellent research and innovation, Science Foundation Ireland promotes and supports the education in and engagement with STEM. We promote an awareness and understanding of the value of STEM to society. Smart Futures is a programme of activity designed for secondary school students like yourselves and is managed by SFI. Smart Futures is all about providing information to students, teachers, guidance counsellors, and parents about STEM careers. Choosing subjects to study in school and courses to do at third level can be tricky, and figuring out what career you want can be overwhelming. Smart Futures provides you the opportunity to discover what types of STEM careers are available, and there are many, and hear from people who work in STEM-related jobs in Ireland. To continue to connect with students during the current restrictions, we are hosting a live stream here on our YouTube channel at the last week of each month. Each month, we discussed one of the 4 pillars of STEM. We began with engineering in February, continued with science in March, and last month we discussed a career in technology. Today, to help us explore career in maths, we are extremely grateful to be joined by John Woods. John works as a senior security architect and applied cryptographer at Informatica. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. There will be time allocated at the end for a Q&A session. Before we wrap up, I will let you know about an opportunity to win a pair of Apple AirPods. Good morning, John, and thank you for joining us today. I appreciate that you have a very busy schedule. If you don't mind, can you please give us a summary of your current role?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Connor. Thanks for having me. I work, as you said, as an architect and an applied cryptographer in Informatica. And Informatica is an American company founded in the US. And they have quite a complicated product base. They have quite a complicated kind of set of products that they sell to big companies. The customer base, so the people we sell to, will be everyone from Formula One teams to companies like Apple and Google. And without going into too much detail, their products are really around managing large data sets. So, of course, all these companies will have lots of data, right? So Apple will have data about their sales and about other aspects of their business that they, I guess, need to manage and drill down into. And Formula One teams, for example, might have data around how the performance of the cars work and the engineering around that kind of thing. And I guess what our products tend to do, and we have a kind of a wide variety of them, but what they tend to be focused on is helping companies get insight or get garner information out of the data that they have. So that's kind of an overview of roughly what our products do.
That's extremely interesting, and I suppose this sort of industry seems quite technical. How did you end up in a career like this?
Sure. So I think, to go back to your kind of first question, which I didn't answer very well, which is really, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? What I do on a day-to-day basis is, I guess, I try to look at the design and the implementation of our products and our I guess, the infrastructure, okay, the computers and the software that's running in the cloud. And I try to make sure that it's secure. So I think we've seen loads of great examples that we can all relate to, even people who don't work in a technical discipline. Things like the HSE or, the health service executive. They recently had that attack where their computers were, I guess, closed down, and there was a ransom that was tried to be extracted from them. And there's been plenty of other companies. There was recently an oil pipeline that suffered the same kind of thing. So increasingly, in modern society, when everything's online, everything uses the web, and we need to connect to each other. So everyone, it's not like you can just decide, hey, I'm not going to have an online presence. Every company out there needs to have an online presence. They can't get away from it. So, or they'll lose out on business. So they're forced to interact with the internet. And as soon as you do, as soon as your products are on the web, in the cloud, then you have a bigger attack surface where these kind of hackers and I guess, malicious entities or malicious people will try to come and exploit you or try to extract money from you. So my primary focus of my work is kind of to marshal or to try to help ensure that for Informatica or wherever I'm working, that the products are coded, so the software is coded in a secure way, that they're architected. So what I mean by that is that we build the products in a way that we can ensure security and authenticity of the product is intrinsic in how we've built it. Okay, so we like the same, actually very similar to building a secure building. You want to make sure you don't have weird, an entrance that people don't know about. You want to make sure that you've used the right kind of locks on the doors. So I try to make sure that the software that we build uses the right building blocks, the right Lego bricks to make sure that it's secure by design. And then the last thing I guess I would do, and this is at a high level because of course I do lots of other little bits and pieces. I think in modern jobs, it's no longer pigeonholed where you do just your job. I mean, sometimes I get involved with things that are not technical, like pre-sales or helping the sales guys explain to potential customers how things work and stuff like that. But the last piece of my job is, I guess, really focused on the selection. Okay, so choosing the right types of cryptographic primitive, and we can talk about that in a second, what that means, to build the applications. So cryptography is a kind of a vertical. It's a kind of a discipline that looks at the protection of data. And I think in the information age, okay, with the internet, as I described before, where it's so ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It's increasingly important to understand the mathematical kind of building blocks. Okay, that's probably the best way to put it, like mathematical Lego bricks that we can use to build applications securely. Yeah, so I guess that hopefully will give you an overview of kind of what I do.
That's very interesting. And clearly your role is extremely technical and does involve maths. And I suppose to take us on a journey, considering our audience that we have with us today, how did you get to an industry like this from your time in secondary school? Did you have a particular interest in maths or other STEM subjects, or how did you end up in this sort of industry?
Sure. No, I didn't have an interest in STEM subjects, and I'll tell you why. I was okay. I think I was a relatively bright student, but I didn't get the grades. Okay, that maybe I didn't get A grades all the time in school. I didn't really feel like I liked going to school all that often. I mean, of course, there was good days and bad days, but on the whole, I kind of wished I wasn't going to school for most of my school time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I learned that mathematics can be useful. Okay, it's useful not only to have a good career that you enjoy and work with nice people and earn a good salary, so that you can enjoy life, but also it's useful in day to day, and we can touch on that in a little bit later on. But just to come back, I mean, I warbled between honors maths and then pass maths and then back to honors. This kind of, as your students will know, there's different tiers of mathematics in school, from foundation to the pass. I think it's still called, maybe it's not, down to this honors level math. And like, I always found it that I was somewhere in the middle of the pack in the class. I wasn't that great, but I wasn't really applying myself because I didn't have a deep interest in it at that point. And of course, I'm not, teachers are going to have a hard time, right? Because they have lots and lots of students, they have a big curriculum, and they're trying to get it all into the students' heads. So within a very short time period, right, to prepare them for an exam. So they're very results orientated, and they're trying to get the students to a place. And I can completely understand that. I think what I'd like to see is a restructuring of the exams in school so that we could spend more time on the applied mathematics, right? So we could teach kids, and I'm sure I've got friends who are teachers, and they've kind of echoed that they would agree with this sentiment, some of them, which is, if rather than teach the curriculum the way we currently do, the way it's set by the Board of Education or whatever it may be, which is very broad and diverse, and they try to touch on a lot of topics from, I won't go into them, but the students will know the ones that they do. It'd be nicer to try to explain to young people why it's important. So for example, let's say you're learning matrices or matrix algebra in school. Hey, well, the reason that's important is because on Instagram we can build filters out of it to make our skin look nicer for the posts we put on social media, right? If we're using, let's say you're learning about, I don't know, modular exponentiation in school, right? So indices and stuff like that, right? It's like 2 to the power of 4, 2 to the power of 8, this kind of stuff. isn't it? You may not realize at the point where you're learning that's actually really important in order to hide information, as we do in wartime, right? As we do when we're sending information to our banks. So I think it'd be great to see the mathematics. What would have made me more interested would be a focus on applied mathematics. So I think that, and when I say applied mathematics, I mean how we use math to achieve things in the real world. Because I think a lot of what we study in school is too theoretical. So with that, I would just kind of add that if you're a young person who's in school and you don't really feel like you're enjoying these technical subjects, that doesn't preclude you, or doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider a future in a STEM career. I was that person. I didn't particularly love the STEM subjects when I was in school. But actually, when I realized that the things that I loved in life and was interested in, like cryptography, like computer engineering, software engineering, engineering in general, so building things with my hands and small projects and stuff like that, when I realized that math was really useful in those things, that's when I ended up going back and teaching myself mathematics again as a young adult in my early 20s. And I did that using, YouTube and Google and books and mostly the internet, really. But yeah, I guess that's something I just like to impart, that even if you don't love it right now, maybe you'll actually find that you will later on in life enjoy it.
So clearly maths is extremely relevant to so many careers today. And I think you gave so many really poignant examples relevant to our audience today of how maths is applicable in all segments of life. And especially as we move more digitally, it probably is in even more things than we even realize.
Absolutely.
So I suppose you touched on it there, that he didn't have a great interest in maths in secondary school. And I think that is something that, and a really important message, that even though something may seem out of reach at the moment in secondary school, if you're in transition year, fifth year, that, yourself, you'll take so many changes, and I suppose your career progression will as well. And that goes beyond secondary school. But from that position that you were in when you were in transition year or so, how did you then decide what did you do in college to pursue this sort of career?
Sure. So it's a good question. The one thing that I felt really enjoyed when I was younger, when I was a kid, well, not a kid, but when I was like, say, a teenager, young teenager, 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever, was like, I enjoyed playing computer games. And I enjoyed at that point, I'm 37 now, right? So at that point, when I was in secondary school, the internet was just kind of taking off. It was just at the point where you could get broadband at home and that kind of thing. So I found the internet really interesting, and I like to learn a little bit more about how these things work. So I studied computer engineering in DIT in Kevin Street, okay, Dublin's Institute of Technology. I think it's called Technological University Dublin, I think now, I'm not entirely sure. So it was clear to me when I was in secondary school that I'd like to do something a little bit techy, because I enjoyed playing around with computers, both for gaming and also for just tinkering with them and learning a little bit more about how they worked. And really, my career kind of went from there. So, maybe I could kind of walk through some of the things I did. So I certainly didn't just become, or didn't have the focus then to say, oh, I want to be a cryptographer, or I want to work with mathematics every day, or I want to work, at the cutting edge of architecture and like that. I started off studying computer engineering. It was something I enjoyed because I had a personal interest in it. And the more I got into it, and the more I learned about the subjects that were part of that, right? So a big part of it is coding software engineering. Another part of it is really learning about the hardware, of course. And then a third part is kind of understanding the fundamental principles that we use to glue these things together. So you have to have a certain basis in mathematics to understand this stuff. And it was at that juncture that I kind of realized, well, if I want to be really good at this, and I did, I had a hunger, I had a curiosity, right? That was what drove me. It was like, I had a curiosity to learn how things worked. I needed to just learn the little bit of math that I needed to know to really get my head around the bigger picture of what we do. And that slowly grows, right? So my first job, I was a software developer, and I in a company called Ericsson, which is, they used to make mobile phones, and they also make, I guess, the cell infrastructure around the country. So you can't really see it, but they make the big machines that basically power the mobile networks, and they sell them to companies like Vodafone. I guess, I I was in that job for 2 years. And then I actually, they moved. It was in the financial crisis. It was a terrible time for like trying to get a job as a young person. You know, I don't know if your students will remember this, but there was back in 2007, 2008, there was a financial crisis, they so called it, where some of the banks around the world had built products that had a bit of a domino effect. And when they collapsed, many institutions lost a lot of money. And that ended up with the jobs market drying up a little bit across the board, from restaurants all the way to banks. Everyone got hit by it because the recession hit everything. So Ericsson actually closed down, moved to China, a lower cost country where they could get similar engineering skills for less money, and I can understand that. So then I was left without a job, even just at the start of me trying to be this engineer guy. So then I started looking around, and I found that there was a role that I could take in Citibank. Okay, Citibank's an American bank, a bit like AIB, but from the US. And I spent some time learning banking. I then moved to London for 5 years, where I worked in foreign exchange. Okay, this idea of swapping money between things. So again, I'm not even directly at this point working in software. I did my degree, had 2 years in software, and then I was doing business type career right, at that point. But at the same time, in my spare time, I'm keeping up to date with computers, and I'm learning a lot about computing and cryptography. And at that point, cryptocurrencies became kind of cool back in 2012, 2013. Bitcoin came out, and I was interested in that. Bitcoin is a digital currency. I'm sure people probably have heard of it. So I wanted to learn about the underlying mathematics of Bitcoin and of these technologies so that I could really try to understand them, because I didn't like this feeling that I didn't really understand how they work properly. And that's kind of what led me on my path. So like, I'm kind of, you can see there's no real plan here. I've basically left college, tried to get a job, lost the job because of recession. And then, okay, a bank will give me money for work. So I worked there. And then I learned a little bit about currency. And then Bitcoin was a little bit like currency trading. And then I was like, well, Bitcoin's cool. How does that work? And then I was like, oh, it's computer stuff. I'm good at that. So I did my degree in that. So I started figuring it out. But then I got down to a kind of a bedrock, right? A kind of a layer where I reached a point where I couldn't go any further, because I was like, for me to learn more about this Bitcoin thing, I have to understand some really complicated mathematics. And that's where I guess I just kept at it. I just spent weekends, evenings, sometimes during the day, just on YouTube, learning bit by bit, just chipping away at it like something out of Shawshank Redemption, trying to chip through the wall. And eventually I learned just enough to understand it. And that's been, I guess, the theme to, how I got to where I am, which is just keep pushing, just keep trying to get to the next level. It's not like one day I sat down with a book this thick on linear algebra or, something equivalent and went through it until I was finished and then thought, okay, I'm done. It's always been kind of on a need to know basis. But I suppose slowly you build up kind of your experience, and you look back one day and you've actually dug quite a big hole. It's probably not a great analogy, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a really, really important message, that although you didn't have a direct career path coming out of college, that the skills you pick up along the way can be applicable in so many disciplines. You use the example there of banking after coming out of college, not doing anything business related, but these skills are still applicable. And I think that's a really, really important message for our audience today.
Yeah.
Just on that, your time in college. So I suppose that's probably where you would have started learning about coding and getting interest in that. And that coding is something that you've mentioned a few times already today. Sure. Can you go in a bit more depth on that and what interested you in coding?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I thought it was cool, this idea that like we all use our computers all the time, right? Use Spotify, use like I'm just trying to think what's cool. I'm not cool anymore, but we use like Instagram, whatever, TikTok, whatever the cool ones are. So but I was like, at one point I was like, man, I'd love to know how to make these things for myself, right? I mean, how do they work? And that's really what got me interested in coding. I like to make little tools, little apps for myself that help me do things I like. I remember, I mean, this is going to sound corny, but one of like the earliest things I did, and it sounds ridiculous now, I had like this girlfriend and I wanted to send her like kind of like little cute messages each day. So she'd have like an app, she'd open the app, it would have some cute picture, and then this is really corny. I can't believe I did this. And then some kind of little message, right? Of course, I could have centered that message on like iMessage or WhatsApp. I don't know why I didn't. But anyway, I built this stupid app, and bit by bit. But like the point is, I just wanted to learn how computers work. Like, how do you get them to do things for me that are very specific to what I want to do? So yeah, I mean, it grew from there. And I guess software development, let me tell you this. When I came out of college, I got an honors degree, like a 2-1 in computer engineering, I still wasn't a good software developer. And I only learned that when I got my first job and I was sitting beside people who were like experienced software developers, right? And I was like, I have no idea really what's going on here. So it took me probably about 2 years before I was a proper what I would call a decent software developer after I left college. So I guess that's another thing I want to impart to people. If you get your first job as a whatever, and you don't feel like a whatever in your heart, like you don't really feel like you should really be there because you feel like, okay, I'm not really this. Like, it's like, we're playing for a football team. You're like, I don't really know if I'm actually any good at this. I wouldn't be worried about that. That everyone kind of feels like that, or certainly I did. And, over time you get better and better and better. And I would say you don't have to be a great software engineer. I never wanted to be a person who wrote thousands of lines of code a day because it's very tiring and it's not for everyone. But what is useful, okay, is to have a modicum of understanding, or a small understanding of how software engineering works. Because you will find, I think, especially if you're going into a career in a STEM vertical, okay, in the STEM arena, you'll find that many times having that little bit of knowledge about how you write software is very useful, and it will help you in conversations about things that aren't even really software related.
And clearly, these skills are extremely applicable, and it's very interesting that you talk about, I suppose, learning on the job. And I think that's something that we don't come out of college as the finished article, nor should we expect to be. So I think driven by curiosity and always willing to learn, I think is a very important personality trait. And clearly that's something that's driven you throughout your career.
Yeah.
So I suppose just to understand your role a wee bit more, what is your favorite aspect of your current job?
Sure. So I guess what I love about my current job is that I get to spend a portion of my day just learning. So there's times when, okay, it's busy and there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that needs to be just done. And I have outputs, as in like people expect things from me on a regular basis, and I have to do those things. But there's part of my day where I actually just get to better myself. And when I say that, I mean, learn about new technologies, learn about new patterns in crypto or in whatever, right? So, or in software. And my company doesn't mind me doing that because it's important that I stay at the cutting edge of this stuff. And it's wonderful because effectively I'm being paid to make myself stronger, right? To make myself better and more capable. And in turn, I'm able to execute my job better for the company I work for. But that's a really, really wonderful thing. I mean, does it get any better? I don't think it gets any better than being paid to spend time learning about things you love, right? So that's good. So that's probably my favorite bit. And yeah, I guess I'm just trying to think what else I like. I mean, like, it is a fun job. One of the things that I think that's really cool when you're working in software, math, technology, engineering, whatever, is that you kind of get to build things all the time, right? So like, I don't have I used to, okay, stack shelves in Londis, okay, when I was like 16. You go in every day, what's missing, get it from the back, put it on the shelf. I hated that work because it's so repetitive, and you're not getting anything out of it. Well, I wasn't, okay? When you're working in a STEM kind of career, I find certainly that on a day-to-day basis, you don't know what you necessarily will spend some time on, right? I mean, yes, like I said, there's day-to-day tasks that have to be done. But in general, it's like each day there's a new challenge, and you're working with smart people who are also engaged on things. And really, it's kind of like, it's cool not knowing what every day is going to be, right? And that's something that I think you definitely get from a STEM career that you don't get from a banking career. Because I can tell you, when I was working in City and working even in London in that brokerage I worked in, most days you do the same thing. It might be interesting stuff, but you're doing the same stuff. Whereas I think in a STEM career, it tends to be more variable.
That's extremely interesting. You touched on it there, and you clearly have such an appetite to learn and better yourself. And I think that's really, really inspirational. Um, but I suppose with that sort of drive, and when your occupation allows you such time to focus on learning and developing your own personal skills,
Mhm.
how do you manage that sort of work-life balance? And because the lines start to get grey there.
They certainly do now that I'm working from home. I'm in my son's bedroom here as a makeshift office, and yeah, I think the work-life balance thing can be tricky. I think not every company gets it right. I think Informatica do. I'm not saying there's not days where I work late. Sometimes I might be on a call at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I might be on a call at 6 in the morning. But in general, I have time to myself. I have relatively reasonable days. I think, I was kind of thinking during the week when I was chatting to someone about this. In general, I find that the companies I've worked for that were in the STEM niche or vertical, okay, those jobs have been the roles that I had the most autonomy. Okay, autonomy meaning reliance on myself. I wasn't being micromanaged, if you know that expression, where I have someone over my shoulder all the time. And they also were the roles where I felt like I had the best work-life balance, because work-life balance is important. In my view, if you're going to work every day tired, you're not going to be able to perform right. Excuse me. If you're going to work every day and you're dreading it, you're not going to perform well. So I really think it's important to have a balance where you do get the rest time, where you get the respite, and when you get time to yourself. Okay. So absolutely, in my experience, I found that the work-life balance has been excellent in the career I do. It's certainly better than my brother, my sister, my wife, who all work in non-STEM careers. Much better. I have more time to myself. Sorry, it's my watch. I get a much better work-life balance than those guys. But here's the thing: to a degree, you have to own this yourself. I mean, obviously it's a philosophical thing, but like, I think a lot of times it's up to the person themselves to be assertive, to take that time for themselves. Like many, I think a lot of people are overworked because they don't know when to say no, and I think it's okay to tell your employer no. Sometimes.
And clearly you do find your job extremely enjoyable. But as you said there is things that you have to do on a daily basis. And do you find them parts of your job stressful, or do you find any parts of your job stressful?
Not really. Not really. No, there's no stress. I feel like I know what stress is like, right? Of course, I've worked plenty of jobs where you have tight deadlines, and there's deadlines in what I do now, but I'm comfortable in my job because I'm good at it, and I'm good at it because I love it. I love the thing that I'm doing. And by the way, that doesn't mean that every day, if you can still hear me, I think I broke up a little bit there, but it's not like every day I jump out of bed and go, yippee, I get to work again. I don't feel like that. Of course, I'd rather be retired somewhere in the Riviera with a glass of red wine, right? But failing that, right? If before I get to that point, which will hopefully come in my 50s, 60s, whatever, it's great to get out of bed and not have a problem to do what you've got to do for the day. So that is really probably the reason I went back to big tech, or went back to a tech job away from the financial industry, which also pays very well, was because I wanted to get up on a Monday morning and not feel sad that I was working. And I guess that's the thing I have now, because I have an internal care for what I do, and I have an internal passion for tech stuff. It's easy to get out of bed and do my job in the morning. And that's really important, because you spend a lot of time working, right? So you got to do something that you at least find okay.
Definitely, yeah. And I think as careers get longer and longer and the retirement age is only pushed out, it is so vital that we enjoy the things we do on a daily basis.
So you've broken up a little bit.
Something perhaps we haven't talked to you there for managed jobs, but did you get an opportunity to communicate with others and work as part of a team on these projects?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I constantly work as part of a team. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Just the internet broke up a little bit.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So, yeah, I mean, I interface with different teams globally. There's teams like from the east all the way to the west, from California to like Mumbai. I'm working with with people from all over the world, from all different skill sets and backgrounds. And I do that literally daily. And actually, I depend on those people. Like I had a meeting this morning, first thing, with a person, and if they hadn't enabled me, okay, then I wouldn't have been able to progress through the rest of my day. So regularly rely on people, and I think that that's critical, right? You have got to hire the right people and build strong teams. And if you do that, then you get this well-oiled machine that's working well and is not blocked, and that's super important. And I guess, though, there is an element of times when you work on your own in a STEM career, you have to be prepared sometimes to just sit down with you and the computer and try to figure something out. But the one thing I'll say is in kind of science, technology, engineering, and math, there's an ideology, or there's kind of an idea that and it stems from this idea of this like open source software and free software, this idea that there's huge communities. Like if you went on the internet, you'll struggle, in my view, to find a passionate community around, say, accounting or maybe law. I'm not saying that there's not communities there are, but it's not a thing that people spend their weekends excited about. Okay. Whereas I think if you look at any other subject in STEM, there's like an entire community there that's happy to answer questions and kind of like try to grow the thing. There's always this passion around engineering, and that's really cool. So I say that because even the times where you are going to be on your own, okay, where you're working on a task that is a solo task, that's not something that you're executing as part of a big team or a small team, there's still support there. So you're never really on your own, right, in this kind of career, because no matter what, you can always reach out to someone and ask a question on the internet. So that's probably my favorite. And to be honest, I ask a lot of questions on the internet.
That's brilliant. And I suppose the internet probably has plenty of answers too. Yeah. Something you touched on there briefly was, working with people from across the globe. And I'm sure working with such a diverse group of people, you probably pick up so many things from different cultures and such. But have you got the opportunity to travel with your current job?
So with my current job, it's basically been all the COVID time, which I'm sure people are sick of hearing about that word. But so I haven't actually traveled much. But had that not been the case, yes, I would have been enjoying the sunny streets of San Francisco. But in terms of like my previous roles, and I've worked in lots of different places in central bank. I worked as an architect, software architect as well. I've managed to see loads of parts of the world. I've seen like Hong Kong, Shanghai. I've been to the US a couple of times. I've been all over Europe, like every country there is like there. And then I've even been to some more interesting places like Turkey, and I even spent some time working in Israel, okay, in Tel Aviv. And it's funny, I remember when I was traveling to Tel Aviv, I was a little bit nervous because it was at the time when there was this like the shield thing. There was missiles that in the Gaza Strip and stuff or whatever that they were firing into Israel, and obviously there's a lot of conflict there. But I was a little bit nervous about going over. And then when I got there, because you look online, right? You look online and all you see is the headlines, right? The CNBC, oh, more bombings and whatever. And I got there and it's like this paradise, man. It's like the beaches are beautiful and the people are really nice and everyone is friendly and the food is cheap. And I'm like enjoying some fried fish with like a rum and coke on the beach. And I'm like, hang on a second. This is not how they sold it on CNBC. So anyway, I think it's been great because I've gotten to see these places. And when you're working for a company, of course, they send you there to do a job. But after the working day is over, the client or the customer will usually bring you out and you get to enjoy these places for free, which is really good.
That sounds excellent. You're really, really selling STEM careers here.
Yeah.
I suppose I couldn't let you go without talking about crypto. It's something that's so relevant at the moment, and clearly your occupation has pushed you further into crypto than most people. So could you talk about that for a bit, cryptocurrency?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was a lead architect at Consensus, and Consensus is one of the biggest companies in the world. It was started by one of the guys, Joseph Lubin, who started Ethereum. Ethereum is one of the big cryptocurrencies, right? There's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, there's Monero, which is one I'm quite passionate about because I think it's very interesting. And I guess, yeah, so I'm well placed to talk about this. So I've actually worked as a lead architect for a cryptocurrency company for 2 years. And I built some big systems on the Ethereum blockchain, some big enterprise applications. And it was a really cool experience. The one thing I think is really important is the reason I was good at that job was because I recognized that blockchain Okay, we talk about blockchain as the basis technology for cryptocurrencies. Blockchain is really just applied cryptography. If you break blockchain down into its Lego bricks or its basic building blocks, what you'll actually find is a hash function, an elliptic curve signature function. You'll find these mathematical blocks, these basic fundamental things which we use to build cryptocurrencies. So for me, I think that the most important thing to take away from cryptocurrencies is, like, if you can learn not about blockchain, don't worry about blockchain, right? But if you start digging deeper and you take apart blockchain and you figure out the things that are underneath it that we use to build this blockchain thing, that's when you truly understand this stuff. And that's when you truly are able to kind of focus on building things with it. Because I think too many people out there talk about being an expert on blockchain rather than being an expert, say, in applied cryptography, which is what I try to be. So, but yeah, cryptocurrencies are exciting. I believe in them. I mean, I've worked in central banking, right? I've seen not only banking, but I've seen how the regulator works, how the Financial Conduct Authority works. So I understand macroscopic financial policy, and I can understand there being a certain fear or maybe trepidation in relation to cryptocurrencies because they threaten the right of seigniorage that the central banks enjoy. Seigniorage is the right to issue currency. I think that we will see probably the crypto asset space grow because it empowers people. And I think that's the most exciting thing about it. So if I could just kind of, in a simple term, the powerful thing about cryptocurrencies, and I'm not talking about any particular one, is the fact that they are permissionless, as in you don't need to have a home or an address to use it. When I was in London, I had to have a house before I was allowed to have a bank account, right? And that was a pain. Whereas with cryptocurrencies, all you need is a computer. And that's a powerful thing, that's permissionless. And then they're censorship resistant. So, like, there's no one country or entity or company that can stop a transaction. And that's a powerful thing. And then finally, the decentralized nature of them, the fact that, like, again, if the US decides to close down Bitcoin, that doesn't stop it running on the rest of the world. So these ideological principles are important. And then when you add some kind of unique selling factor on top of that, or unique quality like Ethereum has with the smart contracts, being able to express logic on this blockchain, or Monero with its privacy-focused kind of, being able to move money privately and spend money privately, that's when you have real power. But just to be aware, be very careful when you're investing money in cryptocurrencies, because there's so much terrible stuff that's completely going to go, in my view, to zero. Not all of it, but some of it. So you really have to do your due diligence before you buy, because everyone loves it when the money's going up. 100 euros becomes 200. Hey, it's great. But when 100 becomes 20, it doesn't feel as good. So just beware.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of caution that has to be taking place, but it's still clearly a really, really exciting industry. And one that I'm sure you're very, very happy to be a part of, and something that's going to be a bigger thing in the future. So I suppose coming on to that, and I am conscious we're coming close to the end of time here, but one question I always love to ask people I have the opportunity to talk to is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And I suppose in your industry, things are changing so fast, and so, well, every STEM career, but especially in the field you're in. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Yeah, so over the next 5 years, I'd like to transition to, I guess, an executive role. So being a chief technology officer, or a chief information officer, or a chief security officer, or indeed like, a managing director type role, where I'm basically directing strategy and vision for the company rather than doing the implementation. So now I do a little bit of strategy, but I'm mostly on the implementation side. Teams under my guidance and working with them, we will implement a product or an application. Whereas where I'd like to get to is where I'm kind of setting the strategy for a company, right? Where I'm basically across the board, broad strokes, setting the way we do things. And I think that's probably, in a STEM career, it's probably, as the holy grail, right? It's where everyone would like to be, being able to set the strategy for a company. And there's responsibility in that, but I think that that's where I'd love to get to over the course of 5 years.
That's really nice. And I think having that sort of plan in place, and clearly, you're extremely driven and driven by curiosity. I think that was such a lovely thing you said earlier on. And I think, yeah, no, really, really nice to talk to you this morning. So thank you, John. And I'm conscious of time because we're getting on. But that was excellent. And thank you all for the great questions. I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion. If you want to learn more about careers in maths, visit our website at www.smartfutures.ie. There we have interviews with other STEM professionals discussing their careers and the journey they took to achieve it. There is also general information about other STEM careers so you can discover what is most suited for you. If you missed any of our previous This is STEM career talks, they can be found on our YouTube channel. To begin in February, we were joined by Rahima Ahmed to discuss a career in civil engineering. In March, we were joined by Kieran Egan from Abbott to learn more about a career in science. And last month, we were joined by Niamh Donnelly to hear about her career in technology. Also, check us out on social media. For more information on how to win a pair of Apple AirPods, visit our Instagram at SmartFuturesIreland. Follow the account and tag 2 of your friends under the most recent competition post to be entered. We'll be announcing the winner next week. Once again, a massive thank you to John, Michael, our ISL interpreter, and everyone who contributed questions during today's discussion. This has been our final career talk for the 2021 academic year, and we hope you will join us for more Smart Futures content in September. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys.